I think that I reached out to Mr. Jackson. Like I said, I think it looks like about a month had passed, and I had let him know that I had spoken to the DOJ and got clarification on moving forward.
Okay. So in April of 2024, you reached out to the defense and said that you had permission or a green light to move forward in the relationship with the defense in this case.
I had clarification from the Department of Justice, yes.
And that clarification allowed you then to work with the defense on this case?
Not work with. We could be called on the defense's behalf to testify. And for that matter, the Commonwealth could have also contacted us and utilized us at trial as well, if they should please.
So when did you become an advocate for the defense?
Sustained.
Do you feel like you're an advocate for the defense?
No, sir.
Are you sure about that?
Sir, I'm on the science and the analysis that I've done. That's the side that I'm on.
You sure are. Because after that 424 call letting them know that the United States Attorney's Office gave permission for you to be called as a witness, you called them again that day, didn't you? Or they called you on the main line?
We may have exchanged a couple calls that day, yes.
Well, you did exchange a couple calls that day because we have at least some records. And when you called later that day after telling them that you had permission they could use you as witnesses, what did you talk about?
Do you have the records that I could take a look at just so I could see what you're referring to?
Do you remember having calls after you called Attorney Jackson and said you had the green light from the U.S. Attorney's Office? Do you remember having further calls that day?
I think we had a couple brief conversations, yes.
Okay. When you think about it, do you remember them, or are you just saying you think but you don't know?
I don't remember. I remember that there was one conversation, I believe in early May, that I had with Mr. Jackson, in which we engaged in a conversation where I gave him more information about my background, who ARCA was as a whole. I think we even got to talk a little bit about my family, my 4 kids and things of that nature, but it was a call about background and qualifications.
We're still back in April. You're moving ahead to May when you first started billing. I want to talk about back in April. Do you remember having conversations on April 24th with Mr. Jackson? Do you remember that?
I'm going to allow that.
I remember that there were conversations, yes. Specifically what they were to. I remember, I think they were brief, but I don't remember the specifics of them, no.
Well, in the brief conversation, what do you briefly remember about that brief conversation, Doctor?
Well, as I mentioned, I think I had finally received clarification from the DOJ, so I think I was letting him know that I had received that clarification.
Well, sir, you said that that was the first call. There were more than one call. There was then 2 calls to the main line. What did you discuss with him during those calls?
Well, to be honest with you, the call to the ARCA main line, I don't even know if I spoke with him. That's just to the main line, not to me directly. So he could have spoken to a receptionist who then tried to get a hold of me, right? So I don't know if that specific call to the main line was to me or someone else at ARCA.
Well, this is a new relationship, right? You were working on a contract with the federal government. You have only spoken to Mr. Jackson, according to you, twice. You don't remember the early conversations with them and what they were about?
I'm sorry, are we talking about now at the end of April still?
Yeah, we're still talking at April. April 24, 2024.
Yeah, as I just discussed with you, from what I recall, it was relaying to him the clarification that I got from the Department of Justice.
Right, but that doesn't take more than one call, does it?
I don't know. He may have been in court. There might have been some phone tag. I don't know, sir.
Well, there was a 9-minute call on April 24th, and then there's 2 calls to the ARCA main line, 3 minutes and 2 minutes. Do you remember any of those calls?
Again, when you say 3 minutes and 2 minutes, that makes it sound like, in all likelihood, he contacted the ARCA main line, got a hold of a receptionist or my project manager, and couldn't get a hold of me.
Are you just making that up, or that's what happened?
Sir, that is my best guess. I don't recall from a year ago.
We're not asking you to guess. I'm asking for your testimony.
That's what I recall, sir.
Do you recall him calling a secretary on the main line? That's what you recall?
He very well could have. I just don't know, sir.
But you're making a representation that you recall him using a secretary in the main line. I'm asking what you actually did and actually said. Do you remember speaking to Mr. Jackson, Mr. Jackson or anybody on the defense team after that initial call back on April 24, 2024? Do you remember those 2 phone calls?
Objection, Your Honor.
So let's get an answer.
I don't remember those phone calls specifically, no, sir.
Next
Do you
question.
remember the phone call on April 30th, 2024? Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that call, sir.
Okay. Do you remember the call on May 1st, 2024? 40
I don't have the records in front of me, but was that a longer call by any chance?
It was 40 minutes long.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, yes, as I just described earlier, that would have been the call in which I went over with Mr. Jackson a little bit more about ARCA, my background, my education, qualification, the kind of casework that I do, things of that nature.
And did you discuss issues regarding this case?
No, sir.
So during the 40 minutes you spoke, you never discussed any of your findings that had already been made?
No, sir.
You had never discussed any of your testing in this case during that 40-minute conversation?
No, sir. And it was all laid out in the report that was issued in
I
February.
understand the report. I'm asking you, did you have any conversations about it with the defense?
No, sir.
So in that 40-minute conversation, you talked about your family, your pastimes, ARCA, but never, ever talked about this case?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
Correct.
You billed for that time, didn't you?
I believe that I kept track of that time, yes.
Okay. When you kept track of the time, did you submit that time and ultimately get money for that time?
Again, I routinely keep track of my time when I'm working on a project. So yes, that time was kept track.
That's not what I'm asking you. Ultimately, that time that you kept track of, did you then submit it and get paid and compensated for that time? That's what I'm asking you.
Well, first off, I'm a salaried employee, so I don't get direct compensation when an invoice goes out. That old invoice, when it's sent, ultimately comes back to ARCA. That doesn't come back to Dan Wolfe.
Okay. So in order to get paid for that, you would have had to submit that time through ARCA to then forward it, wouldn't you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Going to allow it. Is that true?
Yes, I keep track of my time so that my boss knows what I'm doing, yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, can we approach, please?
Who asked me that?
Me, Your Honor.
Yes. Come on over.
Thank you.
Doctor, again, to focus you, we're on May 1st, 2024. May 1st, 2024, you had a conversation with Attorney Jackson.
Correct.
And at some point, did you submit the time you spent and forwarded it so that that could be billed?
Yes, and I will note that all of that time was actually tracked under the same project number that the work that was done for the Department of Justice was under.
So at the time you had that conversation, you were keeping track of hours, correct?
Something I routinely do, yes.
And do you know who ultimately paid that bill for that day, May 1st, 2024?
I know now that it was the defense, yes.
Okay. Now, when you billed, did you bill for the entire conversation?
I don't know.
You said most of the conversation was background, talking about ARCA, talking about your families,
Yes.
right? Do you typically bill clients when you're spending time talking about families?
Again, that wasn't the entirety of the conversation. I think you just briefly asked me about my
Oh,
family.
now it's brief, okay. All right.
Objection, Your Honor.
No comments, please.
Do you typically charge when you're talking about non-related work matters in your billing?
Sir, I think the majority of that phone call was related to, again, work-related topics.
Work-related, it took that much time to talk about ARCA?
And my background, certainly.
Yeah, okay. And how much was the majority?
Sir, I don't know that I can parse it out in individual segments or minutes for you.
And so after that May 1st conversation, did you communicate with the defense before June 9, 2024?
I don't believe so. I think from what I recall, next up was, I think, the voir dire. I think Alan contacted me, letting me know that the court wanted to do a voir dire of myself and Dr. Rentschler.
And you mean Alan, you mean Attorney Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you became friendly.
I guess first name basis, is that what you're referring
No,
to?
I'm saying, did you become friendly?
No, I wouldn't say that we were friends.
I didn't ask if you were friends, I said, did you become friendly?
I talked to him like I talked to all of the attorneys that I work with, sir.
What would you call me if you were going to address me?
Probably Mr. Brennan.
So, do you remember the next time you spoke to Alan?
As I mentioned, it probably would have been sometime in early or mid-June.
Going into June, you were keeping track of all your communications with Attorney Jackson or anybody from the defense, weren't you?
I don't know if you mean, what do you mean by keeping track?
Well, do you have a folder where you make notes when you have communications with an attorney and discuss issues?
No, sir.
You don't make notes?
Not for brief phone calls, no.
For your billing, do you save phone records or text messages so you have some collateral evidence about the billing?
No, not when it's things about, again, logistics and traveling and scheduling, no, sir.
And by the way, when you put together your phone records and text messages that you sent to the court in response to the court order, did you have actual records?
What do you mean in terms of actual records?
Well, I see like a summary chart that was developed. Who developed that summary chart?
So that was, again, as I mentioned earlier, I was unfortunately unable to pull anything from T-Mobile. I just could not get access. Then what I did is I logged into my personal Verizon phone records, and I was able to go back for 3 months. I couldn't get back to December, and then I downloaded the spreadsheets, and I extracted those rows and provided that.
Did you provide the actual records or just the spreadsheet?
Well, I provided the spreadsheet, which was pulled from the records. I would have had to redact a lot of phone numbers if I was to put in the full extraction, if you will.
So you didn't provide the full extraction?
I provided the full extraction as it relates to all of the contact between myself and Mr. Jackson and Miss Little.
Did you ever delete texts?
From last year?
Yes.
Yes.
After you had text messages with the defense, did you delete those texts?
Yeah, after the trial concluded, I mean, that's something I routinely do. I'm not going to keep texts from Mr. Jackson, especially now that we're past a year. I would have no reason to keep those, sir.
I'm not asking for the excuse. I'm asking if you did it. Did you delete texts?
Again, it's something that I typically do. I communicate with attorneys all the time, whether it's for trial or inspections. I don't have a habit of keeping a text chain about scheduling or meeting or, hey, can we meet at this time or show up here. I just don't have a habit of keeping that type of text.
So
He's
you-
not my friend, sir.
So you didn't delete texts?
I think I just told you that, yes, I did delete the text.
Oh, you didn't tell me, but you just did now. Thank you.
Objection, Your Honor.
So next question, no
Okay.
comments, Mr. Brennan.
How many texts did you delete in communications with the defense?
I don't know the number, sir.
You don't know the numbers?
I don't have the text. So you're asking me over a year ago almost about text messages. I don't recall how many there were.
All right. Was there 10, 100, 1,000? How many were there?
Of ones that I sent?
No, not just what you sent. Either way, back and forth.
Probably, I don't know, maybe around 100 or so.
And when did you delete those over 100 texts between you and the defense?
As I mentioned, I think the last text that I remember was Mr. Jackson texting me just thanking me for my time coming up here after the trial. Again, that was at the end of June, and then I didn't hear from him, and at some point, I don't know specifically when, it would have been last year, but I deleted those texts. There was no reason for me to keep those, sir.
Do you remember about when you made the affirmative intentional effort to delete around 100 text messages between you and the defense?
It would have been sometime after the trial, probably before I got my new phone in November, but it would have been probably in the month or two after the trial, sir.
Where were you when you were deleting these texts? Were you at your office, at home? Do you remember sitting down and deciding intentionally you were going to delete over 100 texts? Where did that decision happen?
I have no idea, sir.
You can't remember deleting over 100 texts where you
Sir,
were?
I just said I delete texts routinely. You're asking me to specifically give you a location and a time when I deleted those? I don't recall that.
You said it was after the trial.
Yes.
And out of the 100 texts or so, who were you texting on the defense team?
I believe it would have just been Mr. Jackson on that.
Did you ever communicate by any other means, like signal or an application?
During the time of the trial?
Anytime.
Yes, sir.
With the defense?
Yes.
Is it typical for a biomechanical engineer to use an application like Signal to talk to an attorney on a case?
Sure.
You know the benefit of Signal, don't you?
I mean, it's a messaging platform, yes.
Well, it's an encrypted app, isn't it?
What was that?
Encrypted?
I don't know, sir.
It keeps no record of the communication when you use an application like Signal, does it?
I don't know, sir.
Well, you used it. Did you have it on your phone that you were using it with other people?
No, I don't believe so.
So the only time that you use Signal in your career is when you were dealing with this defense team?
Yes, it was earlier this year. Mr. Jackson had communicated with me, indicating that it was his preferred method of communication. So yes, we did exchange some messages on Signal. But this was at no point in time during the first trial.
Using the Signal app, was that your suggestion?
No, again, I think it was Mr. Jackson that said it was his preferred method.
Is that standard in your industry to use Signal when you're talking to clients?
I don't know that there's a standard out there, sir.
I'm asking about your standard. Is it
If-
your standard to use an encrypted app when you're talking to attorneys?
If the client has that preference, I don't have a problem with it, sir.
How many times have you done it other than this defense team?
Again, as I just mentioned, it was the first time.
How many conversations do you think you had with the defense team by Signal?
Again, it would have been just Mr. Jackson. And like I said, it was really, I think, just in the month of March of this year, but it was brief. I know that I think we exchanged a couple phone calls, and I remember the call quality was terrible, so we really didn't use it that much.
Okay, you're saying a lot of things. You're saying you think. I want to know your best memory. I don't want you to think. If you don't know, you don't know. How many times did you use Signal with the defense to talk about this case?
Objection, Your Honor.
Going to allow it.
From what I recall, was probably a handful of times.
When you say if what you recall, are you purposely being vague in case there's records, or do you not remember?
I don't remember, sir. As you mentioned, it doesn't keep a log of it, so I just don't recall.
Well, you don't have to rely on a log. You can rely on your actual memory.
Right, I'm telling you that I didn't keep track of it, so I don't know the specific number.
How many times do you think you talked by Signal?
As I just mentioned, I think it was a handful of times.
I don't know what a handful means. I don't know
Probably
what that
around,
means.
probably 4 to 5.
Well, was it 4 or was it 5?
It was probably 4 to 5. It's the best
How-
estimate I can give you.
How long were the conversations on Signal, the 4 to 5 times?
I think they were pretty brief. I'd say probably around 5 minutes or so.
You think each one was 5 minutes?
Probably 5 minutes,
Were you
yes.
putting it on a timer? Each one had to be a maximum of 5 minutes?
No, I'm just giving you my best estimate, sir.
How certain are you that the Signal calls were 4 to 5 minutes?
Again, I just told you I'm providing my best estimate.
How confident are you the times were between 4 and 5 minutes?
That's the best answer I can give you, sir. I'm giving you my best estimate.
I'm asking you how confident you are.
Objection, Your Honor.
Can you answer that? How confident are you, Dr. Wolfe?
I can't answer that anymore.
Okay.
When
Next
you were
question.
required by court order to provide all of the records to Your Honor, you knew that one of the important things you need to respond to were communications between you and the defense for Her Honor to consider, right?
Yes,
Okay. And signal is a communication, isn't it?
certainly.
You looked at all your records and knew it listed the text messages and the phone calls. You knew that, right?
Yes,
You knew that was going to be a representation that you were making to the court about your communications with the defense. You understood that, didn't you?
yes, sir.
And you wouldn't want to mislead the court, would you?
No, which is why I told you.
I asked. You didn't put anywhere in your response to the court order that there were communications beyond text messages and phone calls. You never, ever alerted the court or anybody to that, did you?
Again, because I have no record of it. I
That's-
have no way of being able to tell when those took place or how many there were.
The question I asked you is when you responded to the court order to provide all communications, and you responded by offering text messages, and you responded by listing phone calls, you knew that your signal calls were communications, didn't you?
I provide everything that I had in my possession, sir.
That's not what I'm asking you. You knew the signal calls were communications, didn't you?
Yes,
Okay. And you never informed in your response that there were phone calls through signal as part of your communications, did you?
again, because I didn't have any record like I do with the Verizon entries as well as the emails. I could not, there's nothing I had in my possession, sir.
You've read this court order, haven't you?
Yes,
Did you understand when the court was looking for all communications, it meant all communications?
and I've provided everything that I have in my possession, sir.
During those 4 to 5 signal communications, did any of these occur before the end of the last trial?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did any of these signal communications happen before the end of the last trial?
No, like I said, they were all this year.
You sure about that?
Yes.